action. At the level of insertion and social analysis, I will try to concretize the pastoral problem that the phenomenon of migration and displaced peoples poses to the church, and then try to analyze the causes, the connections and consequences of migration and displacement for the church and society today. At the level of theological reflection, I will evaluate the phenomenon in the light of faith, scripture, and the church's tradition. And the fourth moment, which is a very important moment because it is now how the rest translates into real life situations, will be now the moment for planning for action that comes from the totality of the above three moments mentioned above. And this is the stage of improving the performance of the church and quality delivery of the society at large. Insertion and social analysis of the problem of refugees and migration. The saga of migration, the tragedy of hundreds of thousands of refugees and displaced and vulnerable persons in many parts of the world today, men and women, young and old, who are looking for safety and refuge, is indeed a scandal of the modern times. In fact, the global profile of migration and displacement presents an alarming picture with the nearly 200 million people seeking livelihood and refuge away from the land of their birth. There was never a time in the history of humanity when so many people were forced to leave their homes and countries as political and economic refugees as it is the case today. Indeed, a conflagration of violence in conflict and war zones of our globe continues to drive hundreds of thousands of people from their land and home into refugees and internally displaced persons camps. According to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees report in 1993, and according to one author, Maloney, who wrote in 1995, there are about 20 million refugees in the world. This implies that an average of over 10,000 people become refugees in every single day throughout the year. United Nations High Commission for Refugees report further shows that some 24 million people are displaced within the borders of their own countries. Once this number is added to that of refugees, roughly 1 in every 100 people of the earth has been forced to flee. And this leads one to agree with another author, Mwania, that the refugees and the displaced persons in the world constitute one of the biggest political and humanitarian tragedies of our time. Some of these are Christian minorities in countries like Iraq and Syria who are forced to either convert to Islam or flee their homes or even be killed. We have our television full of reports and news about the mass exodus of Christians from lands where their forefathers have lived since the apostles first preached the gospel there. Although it is a global problem, there is no continent that suffers the tragic consequences of this catastrophe more than Africa, if one considers the situation and the many cases of refugees and displacement in countries like Darfur region of Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, Eritrea, Burundi, not forgetting the situation here with us of the internally displaced persons of our country as a result of the disputed 2007-2008 election that resulted into post-election violence leading to so many deaths and thousands internally displaced. In fact, United Nations High Commission for Refugees report observes that the refugees problem in Africa are the worst and the least known in the entire world. The causes of this phenomenon are varied: religious, socio-political, and economic crises generate refugees and displaced people, the problem of war, persecution, and even poverty. As a matter of fact, as Archbishop Silvano Tomasi says, I quote, "Displacement is not a phenomenon isolated from other social realities. It is the result of political decisions of neglect and lack of preventive action, and also of unforeseen natural events," end of quote. This is similar to what my colleague Professor Majawa would say when he emphasizes that, I quote, "What displaced populations reveal to us are all profound shifts and stresses underlying our socio-economic systems. The major weakness in our system is poverty. Refugee moments are like earthquakes signaling movements between the Earth's tectonic plates. They are warning signs of the deep tensions within our global community," end of quote. It is this crisis, ladies and gentlemen, this crisis of migration and forced displacement in all its different forms, with all its negative effects that dehumanizes, that poses a great challenge, not only to the governments and all other institutions that are involved, but even much more to the church. Already in 1996, Pope St. John Paul II spoke about the seriousness of the situation of refugees and displaced people. The participants of the 4th International Congress of the Pastoral Care for Migrants and Refugees that took place between the 5th and 10th of October 1986 in the Vatican spoke strongly about the problem of migration, stressing that even refugees and displaced people have a right to pastoral care. With this Congress and its outcome, a great challenge is posed to the Church. Some scriptural considerations. The Old Testament provides us with insights into how to look at strangers of audience. In fact, the biblical tradition is famous for putting migrants and displaced people at the center. As Orobato once put it, I quote him, "The biblical tradition puts the migrant and the exile at the very center of concern," end of quote. First and foremost, the Israelites were once displaced people, refugees in search for a permanent home. If you read Deuteronomy chapter 26, verses 5 to 9, you'll read about the experience of the people of Israel as slaves and refugees. I quote, "My father was a wandering Aramean who went down to Egypt with a small group of men and stayed there until he there became a great, powerful, and numerous nation. The Egyptians ill-treated us, they oppressed us, and inflicted harsh slavery on us. But we called on Yahweh, God of our ancestors. Yahweh heard our voice and saw our misery, our toil and oppression, and Yahweh brought us out of Egypt with mighty hand and outstretched arm, with great terror and with signs and wonders. He brought us here and has given us this country, a country flowing with milk and honey." The Israelites were able to see God's concern for them during this time of suffering when they called upon him and he heard their voice, he saw their their misery, toils, and oppression and came to their rescue. This experience of displacement, as the Israelites had it, has also helped in shaping